Hello! Hello, hello. Let me grab my book. Woo! Okay. Oh, let me grab my other book. Bum, 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 bum. Hello, 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 hello. So first things first, thank you everybody for your patience in having this final meeting for White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. Why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism. I appreciate your patience with me getting this going. Some of you may know, some of you may not know, I am back in Chicago getting ready to shoot Chicago Fire. So I got back here about a week ago, and as you guys saw on my post, I was a little bit optimistic about my time schedule this week. But we made it. We're here. I'm very excited. Sorry, I have neighbors now. I thought I heard someone outside. Hey, T. Miss you. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining. I oh God. So just thank you guys. So another reason, well, not another reason. So we're going to be about 30 to 40 minutes on the book, and then about 20 minutes on our next books. Why I chose them. You know, Annie Hansen, Don't Mess With Me, I Might Have Ghosts. This building was built in like 1918 or something crazy. A lot of the buildings in Chicago have a very rich architectural history, which, while this is great, for someone who believes in ghosts like me, not so great. Let the long hair keep living. I don't know, guys. I'm going to have to cut it for Chicago. So we'll see. Got to keep it tamed. Yes, so I have 5 books chosen. We'll talk all about that later today. So, cleanse the house, get the salt. You guys know me too well. So the new books, you guys know you can get me talking about new books super easily. We got to talk about the current book. We've got to finish it up. So, let's finish strong, because I was very affected by this book, and most importantly, I liked the actionary steps she gave. And I also really enjoyed, in the last 50 pages, the steps that she gave that were kind of like how we were expected to bring things up, and how inherently they contradicted what our actual goals were. So I'm talking about Chapter 9, White Fragility and the Rules of Engagement. I thought this was probably the most important part of this book in terms of what we can be doing next, right? It's like 9 p.m. Okay, 9:18, last in German. I used to live in houses from the 1800s. Some rock salt and coasts are gone. All right, love that. Thank you guys. So many posts, I can't read the book anymore. Thank you, Jordana. Love that. That's actually really cool. If you want to post a picture of your book, I would love to feature it on the Rosende Reads Insta story. How do we convince the writers that Gallo needs a man bun? All right, Tessa Brooke. We know that we are trying to have an educational discussion about this book. Be friends with your demons? No. Although I did have an interaction with a ghost in the elevator today. I accidentally click. Let's say I live on the 14th floor. I keep clicking 4. Not the floor I'm on right now. So I pushed the wrong button by 10, and I realized this. So I pushed my floor, and then I started to stop subsequently on every floor. So 9, 10, 11, 12, and I was like, okay, all right, ghost. I see what you're doing here. You're going to stop again. And then after that, it didn't stop, because they thought they were messing with me when I recognized that They were messing with me, so they could no longer mess with me. Anyway, that was my... Okay, so let's continue back. We're going to get back on topic, and then we will have plenty of time at the end of today's discussion to talk about my man bun, to talk about our next books, to talk about everything else. But I really want to get through this part because I know that it's been delayed, but this last 50 pages is frankly the most important part of why we read this book. We read this book because it puts us in a mindset of understanding, a mindset of recognizing the pitfalls in any attempt to have some sort of anti-racist conversation, so as to maneuver around those pitfalls, so as to see them coming before they happen, so we can still continue having our discussion with in hopes of achieving our goal, which is to make someone think. We can never hope that our goal is to change somebody, because in order for someone to change, they have to take it on within themselves. But what we can hope is that we provide all of the tools for them to change. In what form? In questions. I believe questions are some of the best way to make people think and change. Okay, it's been a hard week. I'm a Louisville native. My friend's 77-year-old mom got pepper sprayed in front of her home the other night. Can we make this book required reading for the police force? I think anti-racist training should be required education for all Americans, not just those who claim that they uphold our law and order. It's so helpful to read this book. Right. Sorry, I was on a tangent. But yeah, this book, especially these last pages, is because it's helping us decide our actionary response to our newly found education. So, what I mean by that, we've read this book. We now have a vocabulary with which to converse. A vocabulary we can use to say, I'm now recognizing some of the things that Robin DiAngelo pointed out in things my aunt say, things my cousins might say, things my closest friends say to me when they're not around people that might be affected differently by what they say. And it's our opportunity to then take what they say and educate them. And this is where the rub lies, because she talks about that. She goes, this desire to educate, this desire to teach, while great, can hinder our progress if we aren't fully aware of the entirety of the issue we're confronting. When we confront... Now, also, I hope you guys know, whenever I'm talking to you, I'm merely trying to relate back what I understood from the book. So, I found that... Let me go back and just start reading what everyone's saying. I love the part of a white woman's tears. Here in our parts of the woods in Georgia, a woman got shot by a cop last week. I've reread the book 3 times because I honestly am a bit sclerotic. I think it's a good start, but shouldn't be a gospel as well. Exactly, quintessence. Exactly. It shouldn't be a gospel. This book was merely an entry point for us to have some semblance of tools to foray deeper into the forest of anti-racism education, right? This was merely to give us a preliminary backpack. I mean basic stuff, water and food, for us to then scavenge out into this world and continue learning, continue growing our toolkits, and continue building the skill sets we have with maneuvering this racially sensitive world. And if you're in America, nation. We learned so much. All questions this book leave us. Wow, intense. This book made us think so much about our behavior, about the way we act, and the things we say at one point in our life. And this is one thing I want everyone to be aware of. Tessa and I, sorry T to bring you into this, Tessa and I have conversations about this. What happens if we make a mistake? And I'm posting on a platform that has whatever my Instagram following is. It's gone down since I've been posting more politically, but it's 1 million people. What do I do if I make a mistake? I don't want to make a mistake on that big of a platform. And then her and I reconcile. We're that's our goal. Our goal is to be pushing forward this conversation and then making mistakes. And then very much like this author, being an opportunity for other people to see what happens when people make mistakes. How do we behave when those mistakes are made? I loved the example she gave of her conversation. I think her name was Angela. with the black woman that she offended by making a comment about hair. That story she gave us. I love that because, first of all, it allowed us to recognize that even the writer of this book, who is so well versed in say understanding and vocabulary, can still make a simple mistake such as that and still be unaware that it was a mistake in the moment, only for that to be brought up to her. And then we got to see the proper way, or one of the ways in which we can move forward and learn. The way she asked for a sit down, already telling this person what it was going to be about, so no one was left in the dark or felt manipulated into being there. Like, that whole process is something that I'm like trying to take very seriously for myself. How do I acknowledge my mistakes? How do I reckon with the feelings of embarrassment, guilt, shame? How do I reckon with that? How do I make it actionable so that I can approach the person that I offended, regardless of my intent, and apologize for that offense? I'm sorry I offended you. I recognize this action was ignorant, and this. What else do you need from me to hear aloud or see in my actions that allows us to move forward? I think that is just a beneficial thing for all of apologies with friends. Like, what are the actionary responses that you need from me to acknowledge, this apology? Not just for me to say it here and it be cool for you. What else do I need to continue doing? And I love those steps. And I'm not going to lie to you, to me those steps are the hardest part. This book makes me... Okay, we read that one. This book pretty much teaches us all that it's okay to make mistakes. But we need to self-reflect and think, stand up for them, apologize, and change. We learn from mistakes, and communication is key. White fragility functions as a form of bullying. I'm going to make it so miserable for you to confront me, no matter how diplomatic you try to do so, that you will never simply back off, give up, and never raise the issue again. This is exactly what everyone does. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. That quote is very important. Which books are further into the forest? Well, why don't you wait with me, Annie, and we will see. Hello, everyone. It's been a long time. I hope everyone's doing great. My internet doesn't want to work properly at the moment, so I'm hoping I'll be able to talk with you about this book. Camille, thank you for joining. A POC friend of mine read this book because I asked for her opinion, and she found the tone of it is slightly diminutive towards her personally. Okay, but she did think it gives some perspective. It's really difficult to speak about racism, and now I see the white fragility. It's so hard to speak with white people who don't understand. And I think it comes from the fact that as white people, like she says, we're never taught to look at ourselves racially. And here I include myself because of the privilege I've been afforded in this country, that I'm a person that passes, I'm a person that, other than certain ties to my name and culture, I can maneuver this country free of racial implication until they hear me speak Spanish, or until they see my name, or until... So I'm afforded privilege a lot of the time. And I found myself very fragile reading this book. Confronting things that I wrote, oh wow, I didn't realize that I was perpetuating racism in this way. Thank God I read something and it didn't have to wait to offend someone in order to find this out. I think that's another thing of taking this education seriously is trying to minimize those opportunities for other people to teach you and seek out those opportunities yourself. And that's another thing that I really want to highlight. You guys know sometimes I come in with points. This is one of the points, the highlight, where she's like, when people say, well, what can I do to continue my education here? I don't know why I gave us that accent, but it's fun. She's like, well, you answer your own questions. Well, I don't feel like I was educated on this, so how can I help? Educate yourself. I just really like these actionable steps, and I agree with everyone that has said that it's interesting that the first book we read about, like, specifically anti-racism is going to be written by a person that is white. Yeah, I think that is something that she brings up in the book in a way. To break down white solidarity, to break down, and I know there are some of us that have a much deeper understanding with a lot of this, and for those people, I recognize that some of this may be redundant or unnecessary, and I thank you for your patience and coming along with us to learn about all of this and hopefully be better allies in the future. But also, I don't know, I just found this book very important and fascinating at the same time, because now I'm able to recognize with this new vocabulary, oh, that's individualism at play. Oh, that's white solidarity at play. And then don't even get me started about, well, the whole chapter, white women's tears. It's been fascinating. I'm going to keep reading now. Sorry, I talk too much. I agree, this book is basically a way to open our eyes and teach us to detect racism. Now, we have to continue our journey and learn more. The tip of the iceberg only. There's much, much more. Very well said, Anna. Yes, I love that part too. Everyone makes mistakes, and it was interesting to realize that. Yeah. Some points were hard to understand at the first reading, because it is impressive the way that some words involve us from the deepest and make us think all the things that we do in our unconscious. Self-reflection is the way to go. Well, the cool thing I also see is projection at play. How we often project our ideas onto other people. A friend of mine, him and I started like a writing club where I don't want to speak too highly of this yet because he's been better at answering than I have, but where we write things and we'll send them back to each other. And one of the most interesting things he said that I thought was so deeply artistically truthful, and it was beautiful to see that truth reflected on paper, was he was like, I exist, I feel so bad to misquote him, one of my dearest friends, but he was like, I recognize that, gosh, I want to find it, because it was just, he's like, I am deeply, one of my biggest fears is of being exposed as a bad person. And I act in my life in all ways is to show people that I'm not. So that, and I think that's like, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think it makes sense. Let me know if I'm in the same world anymore. But there's something so fascinating about that truth, to be like, yeah, I operate a lot of the time just trying to prove to people that I'm not a bad person, because I'm so afraid of being seen as a bad person. And while that is good in a lot of instances, politeness and courtesy and respect, deference, beautiful things, reverence, those are all very important things to a society. They could also enclose that society to being nice, to not disturbing the water and making people actively think. And the problem is, because of that fear of being seen as evil or bad, it manipulates us into this camp of needing to keep the peace, being unafraid to make people uncomfortable. And it was just cool, because him and I have we talk about this a lot, we have a very similar background in the way that we grew up, in the schools we attended, so it was cool to be like, oh, I acknowledge, and that's what I like about art, because it helps you illuminate parts of yourself. So I was like, oh wow, I recognize that part of myself, that actively is not only trying to do the right thing, but there's a part of that, if I honestly acknowledge it, I'm doing this not only because I know it's the right thing, but there's a piece of it that's like, I don't want to be seen as wrong or bad. And I think that that's been manipulated and abused to keep people in check and continue perpetuating this white solidarity and this idea that we do not discuss race with people. And I love that we have now some semblance of vocabulary, some bit that'll help us dissect that within ourselves and within the people that we care about, and hopefully provide some sort of steps to this acknowledgement, to this discussion, to this education, to this understanding, and eventually to this growth. Whew. I just talked a lot. I apologize. I will continue reading. I try to refrain from using profanity, but consistency killed it. If you're going to fuck up, it's going to be better or worse, but humans learn from mistakes. Yes. I'm here, what have I missed? Well, don't worry, Breathe Jade. It's okay that you're late. To be part of White Tears was a real learning opportunity. To me, the part of White Tears, I never thought of it in that way, so I'm thankful the book explained that. It's interesting, because to me, that whole part was like, we know inherently from our study together and from what we see of history, that history is written by the victor. That's like the standard line, right? So we know this. And then we know that the history that we all learned was taught by this one victor who's obviously trying to do one of two things: take the people they deem as enemies and put them as enemies, and take themselves, who they seem as heroes, and continue that story. So one of the first steps, in a way, that we all have to do, that this book doesn't explicitly say, is we have to analyze ourselves, take away from our individualism, and look at ourselves as the whole. And then say, all right, as a whole, when you identify me from across the street, what are the main identifying characteristics? And historically, how are those characteristics carried around with me every day? And I thought that was something interesting. How a few of the women that she mentioned in this that would maybe fall prey to white women tears, meaning that they would perform in that way, with these tears of guilt or shame. Maybe they were even honestly felt, but without the understanding of the historical implications. They were deemed ignorant, unnecessary, even more destructive. And it's fascinating how ignorance continues to lead to these destructive understandings and these destructive instances. Whereas if we recognize the historical implications of our determined characteristics, and this is another thing that's annoying because we're also learning a lot to not do that. But for yourself, when you acknowledge that, I know as a man, if I'm at night walking on the street and there's a young lady in front of me, I will not stay behind her. I will cross the street so as to at least give her the sense of mind that I'm not following her. Because I recognize that historically, that provides an unsafe feeling and environment for the person in front of me. I had the same instance in an elevator the other day where I was coming back at night and I was in the elevator with one other person, and I did something. I felt that I did the dumb thing by going to the back of the elevator because I thought I'm going to give them space, be socially distant. But then I recognized that it felt for me, I felt oh my gosh, this feels like praying. She can't see me. I'm in the back of the elevator. I'm trying to hide in the corner because I'm trying to be aware of historically those situations can put different people in different feelings and instances. So all of this to say, I love the fact that she brought up our historical context and how, whether or not we want to, we carry those with us every day. And it's our job to understand those historical, that past, and to actively change it by understanding it so that we can stop perpetuating it. Am I making sense? I apologize if I'm not. I'm reading and catching up with comments, if that's okay. Owning up to your mistakes and educating yourself is way more admirable than simply preaching about how woke you are. Well, woke says that you've woken up. And I feel like what we learned from this book is that we're all in a constant state of awakening. We're never finished waking. And I think that depending on the different tags you have on you as a person contributing to the patriarchal white supremacist society, the longer it would ever take you to fully wake up, if that was a possibility. So yeah, I agree that preaching about being woke just kind of shows that you're not because you think you finished. It's a very funny thing. We have to risk making mistakes and be willing to learn from that in order to keep conversations going that are desperately needed right now. Yes, I found this book insightful because I've grown up in a country where it's not such an issue. So learning which of my behaviors was problematic without me knowing was important. Awesome. The first moment that I've read the title was what the fuck? Now I'm impressed how my ideas have changed. Never judge a book by his or her cover title. Yes. I have people that I've known that because I know different groups of people that have gone on to reading this book, and I have people that I know that have said, no, I don't want to read it. Not interested. I also have an aunt that I'm very proud of that I saw that she was posting things on Facebook, and I was like, wow, she seems like really open to a conversation. She's very good at educating and not being afraid to hold back when it comes to her ideals and whatnot. So I was like, she would be someone that I think would be not only open to this book, but then interested in conversation and discussion. And so I sent it to her because I recognized in the book that she was someone that, when provided the opportunity, might accept it. And not might only accept it, might thrive from this opportunity. So here we go. Yes. We will answer questions about the beard and facial hair after we finish discussing the book. And that's not to say Russia is in any way not problematic, but race is a rare point of argument. So to me, immigrating here was a massive shift in how I think, especially given the current issues here. Yes, I found the part about reassurance relatable. I think many of us have done this to not seem like a bad person and to try to justify being a good person. Well, I like to think of it as like, we don't define goodness or badness from the result. We define it from the act, right? We don't say, well, you're only good if you won and you're only bad if you lost. No, we say you're good if you tried and you're bad if you didn't, right? So I feel like you can never ignoring I'm gonna go back to Handmaid's Tale. Tess and I always say this quote, ignorance is easy, ignoring is hard. You have to work at it. And anyone that in our current state hasn't thought about it, hasn't actively changed the way they thought, hasn't done more than post. I don't want to get into that because I don't want it to seem like I'm subtweeting or commenting on people. But as you guys know, I take the responsibility of having a following very seriously. Yeah. Oh, now I'm going back to that thing. Well, we're all afraid to be seen as a bad person. We change ourselves without really seeing it, especially when we meet people for the first time because of self-confidence, society, everything around us. And then really quickly, one of my favorite parts of this, which I've started to do, because maybe you guys don't know this about me, but I'm a very emotional person, and I'm not trying to say that in a emotionally negative way. I feel like men should be more proud of saying they're emotional. And acknowledging that instead of saying, no, they're more stoic. Because also that's completely misinterpreted stoicism. But, so I know that I have the tendency to get passionate about things. And this passion comes off as aggressive at times. So I know that when it comes to a conversation like this, I need to say, thank you. Give me a little more time. I can't speak about this right now, but I'll come back to you. Or I can't do this right now. Give me a minute. Give me an hour. I'll talk to you next week when we talk. We'll talk about this. To give me time to fully, and not just start saying things that make me feel good, but saying things that are correct. And there's a difference for me. So I know when I'm doing that, I have to be like really smart. Tessa can testify to this. So, and I think most people that know me can. So I like that this idea in this entire book is all just centered around one concept, and that's awareness. Awareness of the other people in the room, awareness of their histories and experiences, awareness of yourself, awareness of what you bring into the room, both historically and concurrently. And then, concurrently, is that the right word? I think it is. I think that's a word. Sounds right. Concurrently. No, I'll do that later. Someone in my class compared a kid of color to a normal, meaning white with it. Literally, that was what she said. And I began to make siren sounds in front of everyone. I think the first step is recognizing our privilege, and second should be trying to remove the negative connotation around the word racist. Yes. Please become a college professor. I need a lot more documents proving my education to become a college professor. Mistakes are proof that you're trying. If you're messing up, at least you're trying to improve and get better. Another thing that I heard from like a business person that I've been reading their books lately was he's like, there are two types of people. There are those that try and learn, and then those that fail. And I was like, wow, failure is just a mindset. Like, you can not succeed. Like, you could say, oh man, I didn't win first place in that race this time. I got second or third or 10th. But you didn't fail if you're like, I didn't because I didn't do enough training in this and I didn't think about this. Also the weather, I didn't prepare for that. You know, if you analyze it, then it becomes not failures, opportunities that you missed. And you're like, oh, I could train like this now and I can do this and I can do this. And then boom, more complete plan, try again next year. And then once again, it just gives you opportunities to learn what you can correct and fix. Took your chance. You brought the book to school, shoved it into people's faces, and told them about racism and how much it affects us, even if they ignored it. I tried to blend in with the popular kids, but that wasn't me. I was weird, I was a nerd, and I learned to embrace it and shout out loud that I was. It's all part of learning. Ana Cat Fernandez, everyone that wants to listen, that was one of the biggest things I learned in playing Simon. Part of Simon's journey was learning that to be the best version of himself, he didn't need to become Jace. He needed to be happy with Simon. And that was something that I had to learn too. I didn't have to become someone else to be the person I wanted to be. I had to be excited about who I was. And I talk about that, about how that was like the biggest learning part for me. And it's so important to recognize that in yourself. Yeah. My mother has barely ever lived in a racially diverse society, but the inherent teaching of the victors is strong even for her. It comes through in what she tries to teach me about others, for her. We are doing quotes today, so if anyone wants to do quotes, I think that is a great time to do it. Thank you. Davina, yo! What's up? Stop learning, stop evolving. Oh, there's that famous Jack Nicholson quote. He's just like, I'll stop learning when I'm dead. Okay, I'm seeing comments about emotionality, because thank you guys for validating my emotionalness. My emotiveness? My emotion? Can't figure out how to say it, but thank you. But yes, I agree with you. Being emotional is great, but I think of emotion as being a firebender. And I know that's very literal. But I think, like when Aang first learns about firebending, he learned about it from that one teacher who's like, no fire. Why? Because fire is extremely powerful and dangerous. Because it can push people to do crazy things with power. Emotions are the same way. They're like firebending. Only when you learn how to direct these emotions to fuel you in the right ways can you become a firebender. And I think that's cool, because it's like having just outward fire doesn't help me. And I recognize that, and I'm trying to work on it. Like, The fire, undirected and controlled, does nothing. It just burns everything in its path. But if directed appropriately and precisely, because it's understood, it can light a candle. You know? So I think there's that play. And that's something I'm working on. Ha! I see someone saying, I'm surprised you haven't yawned yet. That's because I drank a cold brew this morning. I'm wired. And I'm having a second coffee. What's wrong with me? It's a mocha, so it's not really that strong. Guilt is not a response to anger. It is a response to one's own actions or lack of action. And I think that's something that we all consciously have. I don't know, I'm trying to confront in my life the guilt I feel. I mean, and then this friend of mine that I keep talking about is a brilliant artist, whether or not he knows it. But he talked about guilt and shame in this writing, and I will get his permission to share part of it. I've already, I feel, shared too much in terms of the confidence we have with each other and sharing our writing. So I want to confirm that with him before I continue. But he says a lot of really cool things that, upon reading, I was like, God, this guy's cool. And actually, if I can go a step further with you guys, he was one of the friends. I have two friends that I think, in my mind, made up Simon. And he's the half of Simon that was all about that I looked to when I wanted to see what type of music Simon listened to, that I looked to when I thought about how Simon would deal with things. Like, my friend is that friend. So it's really cool that he also is writing stuff, and I'm like, wow, I can't wait to just. So I'm gonna share that. I'm way behind, so I'm just gonna scroll to the front. I can't quit with the coffee. Jordana, can you tell me the page that you read Audre Lorde's quote in 1981? Because I want to read that for everyone. I'm caught up now on comments. So let's give it 5 more minutes for this book, because at this point I feel like I'm becoming redundant. We're all in an echo chamber now. We all, I think, have taken from this book what I hope we would. What I saw Tessa and her friends take was this pulling of the wool over our eyes. This idea of lifting that wool and saying, okay, now the picture in front of us is that much clearer. Not perfectly clear. I'm still looking for the right lens to look through. But as far as I'm understanding, if it's between 1 and 2, I want 2. Right? 148, 149. Alright, I'm going to read this quote by Audre Lorde from 1981. I cannot hide my anger to spare you guilt, nor hurt feelings, nor answering anger. For to do so insults and trivializes all our efforts. Guilt is not a response to anger. It is a response to one's own actions or lack of action. If it leads to change, then it can be useful, since it is then no longer guilt, but the beginning of knowledge. Yet all too often, guilt is just another name for impotence, for defensive destruction of communication. It becomes a device to protect ignorance and the continuation of things the way they are, the ultimate protection for changelessness. Love it. Thank you, Jordana. Love that. And now that we're done with that, thank you. Everybody who kind of tagged along, everyone who read along. I know there are many of us that often join our conversations but don't feel the desire or ability to speak, comment yet. If you listened, thank you. If you read it, thank you. If you passed this book on to one person, thank you. So I realized that this book and this education for many of us has never happened. For many of us, this was our first entrance into this understanding. And it feels as though we didn't know we thought we were dry when we didn't know we'd been treading water the whole time we were swimming. So I apologize for getting everyone wet now. But this idea that we're all in the pool, we're all now understanding, we're fully immersed. We're like, oh wow, we didn't realize we weren't on the outside. We've been in the pool the whole time. Thank you for joining. Thank you for working with all of us. And like I say, and like she says mostly like she says in the book, we all must hold each other accountable continually for this. I know that I'm the one that kind of proctors these conversations, or proctor isn't the right word, moderates these conversations, but I hope we all understand that I, like you, am learning, growing, and any opportunity I get to learn and to grow, I will take. That quote that I shared so long ago, tell me and I'll listen, but teach me and I'll learn. So thank you for that. So now, on to the fun parts. First of all, Tessa and I have been watching The Crown. Very big from what we were talking about. And I have to say, I am obsessed with their accents. It's been crazy. What's next? Alright, so as we all know, we're going to take about a month off. And then we're going to read 2 books before the end of the year. The first being In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. Which I have right here. In Cold Blood. Right? I'm very excited to read this. Second. Alright, so the first book, In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. Accent thing always makes you laugh. I know, because to you, I have an accent, and to me, you have an accent. But the difference is, like, your accents, like, because they still represent class and whatnot, I just love the play that happens there. You know? Dom hates when I do my British accent, because I do different ones, too. I never do the one he has. I always have to do, like, the very British King's speech. Or I have to do, like, very deep Cockney, sounds like this, yeah? But Dom doesn't like that, because they're both not really great. I don't know. In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, and then we're going to finish our year with our third book. Well, we've read other books that touch on the subject. Anytime we've read Toni Morrison, we were entering this conversation with or with not the vocabulary. Maybe not, but so we've done this before. So the second book we're going to read, particularly with an understanding of this vocabulary, is So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijoma, sorry, I had it written down, Ijoma Luo. So, I will post those 2 books, though that is going to be pre-2021. Thank you. I've just been watching The Crown is bad, though, because I'm going into this, like, very posh, like, in acting we'd call it, like, Queen's speech. So those are our first 2 books to end this year. Remember, we're going to take about a month off after this to kind of give ourselves a second to recuperate. I'm starting shooting to kind of get that schedule in. You know, post-COVID, it's going to be I need to have a little more freedom there. So, we will be reading In Cold Blood by Truman Capote in a month-ish. I might announce earlier, I might announce later. But I'm telling you, before the year's end, we will read In Cold Blood, and we will read So You Want to Talk About Race. Those are the first 2. And then I have 3 more for you, too. for the new year. So I am so mad at Instagram right now. What happened? What happened? Why did Instagram restart my live? I think we're back. It seems that we're all back. I see 58 of us. Damn technology. Something went wrong there, and now the entire live was deleted. I'm very upset, and I apologize. That was most likely, definitely my fault, and I apologize. So, in cold blood, I'm just going to dive right back in. In cold blood, so you want to talk about race. Now let's go back to 2021. We will be reading first year in the books, The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. I promised you guys we were going to read that. It's a continuation. Also, So You Want to Talk About Race to be the last book before we all go home for Christmas and talk to our families. And I think it lost connection, paused it, and then it just quit out of live. So we'll go back. In cold blood. So You Want to Talk About Race. New Year's, Christmas. The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. Then we will read 1,000 Splendid Suns. It's a book that people have asked me to read. It's a book that I am very excited to read. I know both of my parents read it. Like, I think it's Khalid Hosseini. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. I apologize for not looking it up beforehand. That is my fault. I will do that next time for sure. But yes, we will be reading. Now let's go 2021. We start with A Fire Next Time, 1,000 Splendid Suns. And because 1,000 kind of was in the mind, after that we're going to read 1,000 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So, we have our next 5 books. In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijoma Olowu. The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khalid Hosseini. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, again, I apologize. And then 1,000 Splendid Suns by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So those are our next 5 books. I chose 1,000 Splendid Suns one because we haven't read a lot of Latin American literature, and we are going to change that. 2, it's a must-read book before you die. It's on every list, and I'm ashamed I haven't read it. And 3, they say it's the beginning of this whole genre of magical realism, which as a Colombian, I'm very, very excited about. So, I will post all of the books at some point today or tomorrow. So don't get mad if it doesn't happen today. I will post all of these books. We will continue this. So before we go, we still have some time now. Any questions? When are we going to read The Library at Mount Char together? Possibly after that. It's just I know I'd mentioned that book a few times because I'm obsessed with it. Obsessed. But the few books before that I feel were more important in the sense of like what I wanted us to end the year with and then begin the year with. You guys know I think about that when we're reading. I think about what book will help us most, and I think for the conversations I intend on, maybe not on having, but on being prepared for, I think So You Want to Talk About Race would be really great to just solidify a little bit of our vocabulary, and then also further foray into the forest, like I said. And then same thing with So You Want to, for The Fire Next Time, to give us a new perspective going into the new year. And I'm very excited to read Cien Años de Soledad. That's going to be really dope. Any other reading suggestions are welcome. Well, if anyone's looking to read some sort of philosophy. And something that's been occupying my mind a lot lately, I would recommend Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. That one is just a really cool book that gives a lot of practical wisdom that you'll see that I kind of share a lot. A lot of the authors and artists, leaders that I like tend to affiliate with this philosophical ideology. Good stuff, Davina. Any historical fiction? Yes. I haven't read it, but I purchased it, and it's in my... Ooh, actually, you know what? Maybe I'll keep that silent, because I might put that on the list. It's a series. You know, I'll just tell you, the same person about whom I spoke that wrote me something that I used as an example here, I gave away. He also recommended the book I, Claudius, as a historical fiction. So if that's something you're interested in, I haven't read it yet, so I can't verify it personally, but I trust this man tremendously. He's one of my best friends. So yeah, I, Claudius, I heard is really great. Also, yes, Annie Hansen's right. The Tattooist of Auschwitz is just beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. I read it in one sitting. Yeah. So, thank you, everyone, for continuing this conversation. Thank you all for being here. Also, I just want to say, at a lot of the conventions that we've had, the virtual ones, a lot of you have thanked me and thanked the community. So I just want all of you to know that all of you are just as happy for the community you've all created. I don't know if you guys often tell each other that or not, but since I'm the one that hears it, I want you guys to know all of you actively make this book club a very positive, wonderful place for learning, growth, and questioning. And I think all of you need to take that responsibility on and recognize, like, oh, cool, we're doing something cool here. And you are all actively a part of that. It's not just me, and it's not just some members, all of us. So you guys should all take a moment and just be proud of yourselves. Like, be proud of this community that we've all worked so hard to build. It's, like I've always said, community is incredibly important. And I think you guys need to recognize that despite all obstacles, space, time, world, we've managed to meet here, maybe not as consistently, but consistently for a few years now, in the hopes that we learn a little bit, grow a little bit, question a little bit, and I think that's really great. So I want you to all thank each other instead of me. I'm just here. I really do think you guys need to take a little bit more responsibility for the amazing community you've helped make. If I was just here talking to live by myself, probably wouldn't have gone on for 3 years. If I wasn't inspired to keep reading because of how many people join and make me think and question things, I probably would have stopped too. So this is all for you. You guys all really keep this going. And as much a part that you think I have in it, I want you to know that you all have an equal part. So I really do feel honored to be part of this community. So thank you. And lastly, I have always been a proponent for the ability to make your own decisions when it comes to who you decide to vote for. And I've always been a proponent for education, science, learning, growth, understanding, empathy, anything that's essentially not the stock market. And I hope that when you do go to the ballot box, for those of you that are American or have American citizenship and can vote in America, I hope that the things we've discussed and talked about influence your ideas and opinions in a positive way, not just for yourself, but for your community and the world as a whole. So I hope that regardless of what you believe or whether or not you agree with me, I know that I would say most of us do, but just in case, I don't want anyone to feel ostracized or pushed out because they don't agree with me politically, but I do want to advocate that everyone goes out there and votes. please register to vote. If you are in the Latinx community, as I am, you recognize that this year we have a tremendous opportunity to make a giant impact and have the rest of the country recognize that we are the biggest minority group voting. This year we have 32 million newly eligible Latinx voters, and only half of us are registered to vote. I made a point with this earlier with Voto Latino, so I really want anyone that knows anyone in the States, you can never force someone to vote for who you want. But what you can say is, hi, I hope that you are registered to vote. I hope that you recognize a lot of the ideals and opinions expressed by one party are based on the oppression of other people. Therefore, I hope that when you make your choice, you advocate for the people whose voices often go unheard. I hope that you advocate for the betterment of all people, not just for your own bank account or your family's wealth. I hope, I've had to do this with a couple of people. So remember, we can't, like she says in that book, use chapter 9 and how you have to approach people, how you have to talk to people. All of these things, unfortunately, these are rules that we try to break, but also we have to play by sometimes to achieve the goal. Anyway, please vote. Please register to vote. This election is extremely important. You'll see me posting more resources and whatnot as we get closer. But for all of you that are American and are eligible to vote, meaning you are of age 18 in many states without any prior convictions or felonies, which is also that's something we need to work on. But if you are eligible to vote, please vote. Your voice needs to be heard. As you all know, I feel that about everyone all the time. Your voice needs to be heard. So there's that. Jules, thank you, Alberto, for starting this book club. It's been the highlight of my week. I've learned so much, and I've finally seen how important education is. Thank you. Without education, we can never get better. So, thank you guys for being here. Continue to vote, and as I say every week, please continue to question, continue to learn, continue to grow, continue to be kind, continue to be open, continue that attempt at recognizing another person's perspective before your own, and continue to be positive forces of change in your communities. The world needs you now more than ever. So thank you guys. I will see you in a little bit. I'll post those books and I'll talk about our season 4 start. That's kind of exciting. I'll talk about that soon. All right, guys, have a safe little break. Please be reading on your own. If you don't know what to read the newspapers. read as much as you can. Find a book, a play, I don't care. Keep reading. Keep that up. Find stuff that you want to read. And then bring that to the book club next week. Not next week, when we do talk. Gosh, see, it's already there. It's already coming back. All right, guys, have a great breath. I will talk to you soon.